Hello, everybody, and welcome to the East Pittsburgh Fitness Podcast. I'm your host, Jeremiah Rowe. I'm the head strength coach at Case Specific Wellness and Case Specific Athletics here in Plum, Pennsylvania. We specialize in sports performance and personal training for everyone from the average Joe to elite athletes here at our facility. And you can learn more about that at www.casespecificwellness.com. I appreciate all of you who are coming back this week to listen to episode 2. You are the survivors of the horrendous audio quality of week 1. I hope y'all understand. I have to conduct phone interviews on this as of right now. And so the quality is as good as it gets on a conference call website that doesn't cost me any money. So, thank you for coming back. Episode 2, I hope, is sounding a little bit more crisp. Big shout out to Mr. Andrew Wade for letting me borrow his podcasting equipment to film this episode since I am on my own today. And I guess that's a smooth transition, talking about why I had poor audio quality because of the phone interview. Today I want to talk about what is on every single person's mind. This COVID-19 virus that is ravaging the world right now. Obviously, I'm sure you guys are tired of hearing about it at this point. It's been a long time. We still have a whole another month to deal with this, at least. And so we're just going to continue to try to make the best of it. Now, I assume that most of you who are listening to this probably follow either myself or any of the case-specific brand pages on social media. And if you do, you may have seen my most recent Fit Brew Friday video where I kind of discussed the COVID-19 situation. And I guess saying that I discussed it is kind of a stretch, I suppose, because it was more of a rant of me getting upset about the stupid trends that I see on social media related to everybody having to work out at home, which is a situation that most people are in right now. We don't have access to gyms, unfortunately. They are, for the most part, all shut down across the country. I don't know of anywhere who isn't shut down, but if you're not, that's awesome. Good for you. Now, rather than just continue my trend from that Fit Brew Friday, because I let my emotions get out of hand and I just kind of started yelling and calling everybody stupid. I do that sometimes. I apologize. I'm going to give you guys some more actionable advice and some useful information today on the podcast. I have to keep this a little bit more professional and make it more applicable to real life to keep you guys coming back. I don't want you to get bored and walk away from this saying, well, that was dumb. He just yelled at me again. So, where I want to go with this is that at the most fundamental level of what we need to think about when we're stuck training at home. And I've talked about this in other videos that I've done as well. We need to break down our exercise into the fundamental movement patterns. Now, different sources are going to tell you different things about what are the fundamental movement patterns, how many there are, etc. What that essentially means is your compound movements, your basic compound movements that you go through in any workout. And so I have them broken down into 7-ish. I guess the last one, I'll talk about it a little bit here in a minute, but it can or it can be considered one. It can also be ignored. Though I don't suggest ignoring it. But let's talk about these. So for our upper body, we have a horizontal and a vertical push, and a horizontal and a vertical pull. So if we're thinking push horizontal, let's just say a bench press or a push-up, right? We're pushing in that horizontal plane of motion in relation to our torso, right? So if imagine those movements standing up, right? We're standing up, we're pushing straight forward. That's your horizontal push. And then we'll think of a horizontal row as your pull, or a row as your horizontal pull, rather. So just imagine sitting on a row machine and pulling the weight back against you. That's your horizontal pull. And then we also have vertical push and pull. I might have got a little scattered there. So horizontal push-pull, vertical push-pull, let's say an overhead press, like a military press maybe, for a vertical push, and then a pull-up or a lat pull-down for a vertical pull. So I hope you guys all understand that. Sorry, I got a little bit scattered there. Horizontal and vertical push and pull for our upper body. Those are your basic compound fundamental movement patterns for your upper body. Now, we switch into lower body. We have a hinge, a hip hinge. Think of an RDL or a Romanian deadlift if you are familiar with RDLs. A squat, a lunge, like a single leg movement, a carry, or some people will consider that a gait, just a walking movement or running, anything along those lines. I like to refer to these more in terms of strength training, so we're going to call that a carry in this case, like a farmer walk or a suitcase carry, something along those lines. And then the last one that I was talking about that could be considered a fundamental movement pattern or it could not is a rotation. So what I like or how I like to explain this to people more is think of lateral core movements, right? So maybe a wood chop with a band or a med ball rotational throw, something along those lines. Just getting that dynamic core activation in there and not just always sit-ups and crunches and even planks. It's a little bit different from those. So those are your, in my case, 7 fundamental movement patterns. And I think having a good understanding of those is something that's going to allow a lot of people to learn the program for themselves and get a little bit more creative about the kind of training that they're doing at home. Because obviously this is a time where we need to be a little bit more creative with our training. It's not obvious having the machines and the weights with diagrams all over the place explaining how to do stuff. And so if you can educate yourself enough to understand each of those movements, then we can start to look at how we can program for ourselves at home. Now, the next point that I want to build into is understanding how muscles grow and adapt. And so if you listen to that Fit Brew Friday video that I was talking about earlier in the podcast where I was kind of getting upset about stupid social media trends, what I was seeing is all these people who are doing stuff like grabbing their poodle and squatting it or doing RDLs with it. This little tiny dog that probably weighs 10 pounds, and these people are squatting. And again, it's funny, it's cute, sure. You put it on social media, but there's too much stupidity and useless information on social media as it is. And I think that more people need to take advantage of that platform as a way to educate others and give them practical, useful information. And so I'm gonna put that point aside here and kind of go into a more physiological explanation of the concept of muscle building or any resistance training that we want that is effective, right? So tension and stress are what cause muscular damage. Okay, that doesn't sound like a good thing until you find out that the way that we make muscles grow and build and become stronger is to break them down. So we attack those muscles, break them down. That's what we're doing when we're in the gym. And then with proper rest and recovery and nutrition, we allow those muscle fibers that we break down to rebuild and repair. And what do? They adapt to that stimulus that we applied to them, and they make themselves stronger and bigger so that the next time we go to break them down with that same resistance and same load, the damage isn't as much. So your body doesn't like being broken down. Your muscles don't like that. They are trying to avoid that, which is why we seek progressive overload, where we can continue to apply more stimulus for more reps, more weight, whatever you need to do, whatever your goals are, to continue to progress in the gym. So your muscle fibers break down, they rebuild, they repair to adapt to that stimulus, and then we need to increase the stimulus to continue the same process. That is a very basic, elementary explanation of how muscles grow, right? So I hope you all understand that. And what that leads into is the next point, which is that insufficient stress applied to those muscles results in insufficient damage to the muscles, which results in insufficient repair, growth, and development of those same muscles. So think of it like this. For those of you who have been lifting for a while, let's say when you started lifting for the first time, and you went and you picked up those 10-pound dumbbells, they probably felt like you were lifting a car, right? It was the most difficult thing you've ever did. You felt uncoordinated and kind of shaky lifting them. Maybe you're doing just a bicep curl, and you're trying to lift these weights up, and you can barely do it. Fast forward that 3-4 years, or even 1 to 2 years, and now all of a sudden you're doing curls with 20-pound dumbbells or 25-pound dumbbells, right? And it's similar. I always joke with people. I say it never gets any easier. Even if your weights go up, it never feels any easier. It just feels exactly the same with a little bit more weight. And so now we're facing that same struggle with some heavier weights. But if you would go back and lift up those 10s again, they're not going to feel like anything. And while before you were able to do maybe 5 to 8 reps of these curls and your form was off and you were struggling the whole time, now you can do 30, 50 of those curls and it's no problem, right? So when we do not apply sufficient stress to the muscles, what we are missing then is that damage that allows the muscles to break down and then allows them to rebuild stronger and bigger than before. And so for these people who are on social media doing all this goofy stuff with dogs, and I mentioned on that Fit Brew Friday watching a professional bodybuilder bench press his couch that probably on the angle that he was bench pressing the end of his couch, it was probably 30, 40 pounds that he was pressing. And we're talking about a guy that can bench press 300 pounds easily. So again, it looks funny and looks cute on social media, but it doesn't do anything, right? We're not causing the damage that we need to build muscle. And so, again, that's where I kind of was going before with, instead of putting this goofy stuff on social media, and again, I don't want to discourage people from being fun. Those of you who know me on a personal level, I'm one of the goofiest clowns that you'll ever meet. But I would like to see more practical, useful information put out there by more people. And there's a lot of people that have a lot of influence that don't do that, and it bothers me. And so that's where I want to kind of help you guys and give you some applicable information that you can actually use here at home whenever you're stuck in your house training. So what are we trying to do? We're trying to find ways to create real damage to muscle tissue and real stimulus that it has to adapt to in order to improve. So I always tell people when you're stuck training at home, we don't have access to a lot of gym equipment, your body weight is going to be your new best friend. Because regardless of what you have lying around your house, for the most part, there's nothing that is going to weigh as much as your body. And there's different ways that we can make our bodies feel like they weigh more or feel like they weigh less compared or based on what we're doing, right? And so let's look at ways that we can make our body weight useful for different exercises, right? So there's a couple ways that I like to break this down. Let's look at the angle that we put our body in to create tension to use for resistance training, right? So there's a couple exercises I want to use just as examples to kind of explain to you what I mean by angles. Let's look first, we'll keep it simple on the first one, a push-up, right? Now, a lot of you listening might not be able to do a push-up. If I told you to drop down to the floor, put your hands under your shoulders, drop your chest down, touch the floor with your chest, and push all the way back up, I would imagine that a good number of you are going to arch your back coming up, your hips are going to stay on the floor long after your chest is coming up, and then they're going to follow through after. You're going to look like a rubber hose getting waved coming up. So we know that at that low angle, flat, close to the ground, that is a very difficult movement, and your body weight feels immovable, right? So now compare that to, let's say you're in your kitchen, and instead of dropping down to the floor, we put your hands on the counter. And then I tell you to drop your chest down and touch your chest to the counter and push back up. Most of you are going to be able to do that with relatively good form. Why? We change the angle that we're applying that force, right? So if you have any kind of background in trigonometry, you'll kind of understand that a little bit more. Or I guess not even trig, it's more just physics. The angles of the force being applied in the horizontal and vertical plane, it changes. I'm not going to give you guys a physics lesson, but it requires less force for you to push up on that high angle now than it did at the low angle when our hands were on the floor. Right? Understand? I think you understand. Now let's compare that to a row. And I started with the push-up because more people are familiar with a push-up than a row, particularly on suspension straps. But this is just a good angle, or rather a good example for those of you who do understand it. I'll do my best to explain it. So if any of you haven't heard of TRX or suspension training straps, what they are is these long nylon straps with handles on the end that anchor to a high surface, maybe on a wall or a pull-up bar hanging. They make ones that can anchor over your door, which are awesome. If you don't have those at home, you should go look for a set because they're really useful for this time whenever you're stuck at home working out. But what these straps allow us to do is we hold onto the straps with our feet angled towards the base of the origin, right? So let's just say a door for this example because everyone can picture a door. And you have these straps slung over the top of the door. They're closing the door so they can't move. And they're coming out at an angle away from the door. And you're holding onto those straps with your feet kind of angled back towards the door. Now what we're going to do is holding those straps, we're facing the door, we're just going to pull ourselves straight up towards our hands. So your hands can't move, they're anchored to the straps, but you're pulling your body from an extended arm position up to where your hands are outside of your chest. So think of a push-up, but just go in the opposite direction, holding onto these straps, right? Now, some of you are going to be able to visualize this. You might have experienced it yourself. Some of you might not. I'll do my best to explain it here. But let's say we're doing these rows. We're pulling ourselves up to the handles of those straps, and we're doing that with our feet really far back from the wall. So we're at more of an upright angle whenever we pull on these straps. What you'll notice is that as you come up to the top, those straps are probably going to lose the tension in them because you're not leaning out against them anymore. And so now we have all this slack in the straps, and we're going to come back down. And it's going to be a very easy movement. There's not a lot of resistance applied there in that position because, again, we're not creating any angular force against the straps. Now, we're going to move our feet way in close to the wall where the door, or the base of the door rather, where those straps are. And now suddenly it's super challenging to pull yourself up because, again, just like that low push-up, we're at that low angle, there's a lot of force that we have to apply and a lot more vertical component to that movement as opposed to the horizontal. And so suddenly it requires a lot more force for us to pull ourselves up. This is where I want you guys to think about how changing the angle of your body makes different movements more challenging or less challenging, right? So for me, as a bodybuilder, someone who's been lifting for 12, 13 years now, push-ups aren't particularly easy or aren't particularly challenging for me to just rep out a handful of them on the floor, or even if we elevated my hands on something. But maybe I'm going to even invert my angle and put my feet up on something and angle myself downward, with my face towards the floor and my feet up in the air to change that angle of attack that I'm pushing and create more of a challenge for me, right? And then it's just the opposite for someone who has a little bit more struggle with push-ups. They're going to lower their feet and raise their arms. And again, with that, you can create varying resistances that can make the exercise more or less challenging. So, keep that in the back of your mind. That is point one that I want to make as far as using our body weight and that being our best friend for strength training at home. Point two is going to be the tension and the time under tension that we put on these muscles. So the best way to stress your muscles without additional weight, we already discussed angles, is to use additional time or keep that muscle under tension for a longer period of time, right? So here's the way I want you guys to think about this right now, wherever you're at, unless you're in a car. Don't do this if you're in a car. But I want you to drop down into a squat, right? Sit your butt back, keep your weight shifted back towards your heels. Sit down as low as you can in the squat. Push straight back up, push the floor down away from you, come up to a standing position. All right? Now I want you to do the same thing, drop down into a squat again, but in that bottom position, or even right before you hit that bottom position, hold for 10 seconds. Just drop down, hold that position for 10 seconds. You're holding it now, I know it. And then after you hold that for that 10 seconds, stand up. Now tell me which one of those reps you felt more of a burn in your legs on. I'm going to go out on a pretty strong limb and say that 10-second squat was a lot more challenging than the no pause squat at the bottom. And that's just one example. There's obviously 1,000 different ways to change that tempo. But the point I want to make is that our best bet when we don't have access to equipment is to use that feature to our advantage to create metabolic stress and change the structure of our muscles, right? So when we drop down, or I don't even want to say drop down, when we apply that tension to our muscles and allow or hold it for a longer period of time, not only does that just burn more because we're keeping tension on the muscles in general and creating blood flow to that area, but what that does is allows us to increase the tensile strength of the muscle fibers by causing them to adapt, having to hold that resistance under tension, right? So what I mean by that is that we're putting our muscles under load, and rather than just putting it under load for a half a second and coming right back out of it, we're holding that load, right? So think of, how do I want to compare this? I guess this is kind of a weird example. I don't know how well this is going to work. But let's just say a rubber band, right? We're in a fast forward time here. When you hold that rubber band and you grab it and you stretch it apart, you put that tension on it, and you let it go, it snaps right back, right? Now, let's imagine we hold that rubber band and we hook it over something that holds it in that stretch position, and we leave it there for a week. Next time we go back to that rubber band, it's not going to snap back to that original shape, right? This analogy isn't paralleling as well as I wanted to, but I hope that you guys can make the connection here. By us keeping that muscle under tension for a longer period of time, we are giving it more opportunity to break down, right? We're applying that tension and that pressure to for a longer period of time, which is going to cause more muscular breakdown as opposed to less time. So now what we do is we adapt our body or our musculature better to hold its own weight under load, right? So that gives us more relative strength in relation to our body weight. For athletes, this is huge for sports performance, right? Because anything that you do on the field or in the court, on the rink, for you hockey players out there like me, I love you. What we're doing at all times, though, is shifting our body in different directions. We're trying to change the direction. We're trying to sprint. We're trying to jump. We're trying to accelerate from a stop. We are always applying force into the ground and having to change the direction or the movement of our body weight. So when we adapt our body, and our muscles rather, to hold that body weight and use it, I apologize for that, more efficiently, we can bolster our athletic performance because we have more control over that. And it's not as difficult for us to be sprinting one direction, stop on a dime, and change directions to go the other way, right? So we're using that time under tension. We are creating more relative strength in relation to our body weight that is going to allow us to boost our athletic performance. And again, this doesn't just apply to athletes think of someone that has a hard time getting up and down the steps, right? And, it may be an older person. And we give them an at-home workout program that has them holding maybe even just a quarter squat. They might not have their full range of motion right now. That's okay. We have them just drop down into a partial squat and hold that for a while. Over time, their body is now getting used to holding the weight of their leg muscles are getting used to holding the weight of their body in that slightly squatted position. That is going to essentially boost their athletic performance, if you want to call it that, and allow them to be more efficient at getting up and down stairs, right? And that's just one example of that concept of athletic performance. It applies to everybody. It's not just an athlete thing. So for those of you listening who aren't athletes or thinking, this doesn't apply to me, you are wrong. No offense, though. Don't be sad. It's okay. Now, I have those are the 2 points that I really wanted to drive home on this show. And with that in mind, I put a handful of at-home workout videos on our YouTube page that you guys can find. If you just go on YouTube and search case-specific wellness, you'll find all my videos on there. And most of them, what you'll see, now I put a couple in there that do use some equipment, just because I know some people do have equipment and they're still kind of confused as to what to do at home. But there's a lot in there that use no equipment. But what they do use is time under tension and changing angles of different movements to help create a training effect for you, even though you are at home without equipment. So there is some resources out there for you to check into that I put up for you guys. I hope you find them useful. Give that a look. Where I kind of want to wrap up this whole idea is, though, these are just two approaches, right? And there are two of infinite numbers of approaches that you can possibly take. And so I'm going to transition a little bit away from those ideas right now, because another way to think about this time that we're stuck in this quarantine situation is that it's a great time to change up your training stimulus, right? A lot of you are just, you might lift weights just to be healthy and just to maintain general good health. And so an opportunity to change it up and get away from what you're comfortable with is a very good thing. For some of you, again, like myself, to use myself as an example, where I am trying to always be building muscles to get bigger and stronger for bodybuilding competitions, for me, maybe changing up some stuff isn't always ideal. But I think you'll see a couple of these that I'm going to list here, a couple ideas, are great for even someone in my situation, right? So now let's look at that. You're someone who is comfortable lifting weights, and you're doing that just for general health. Maybe we use this time to boost our aerobic capacity a little bit. So we focus a little bit more on cardio-based training. I know that's kind of a swear word for some of you like myself, but we might take this time to just get our hearts a little bit healthier. Maybe you're going to focus on more circuit-type training with short rest intervals and just really get your heart rate up like crazy, doing maybe treadmill and jumps in place and jumping jacks and burpees, stuff like that at home. That's great. That's a good change up. And again, it's always a good thing to work on the heart a little bit. I know a lot of us lifters like to neglect that a lot, but that's a really good use of your time. And again, there's a million different high-intensity exercises that you can do at home. And the same goes for running, or maybe if you're completely out of shape as far as cardiovascular health, and we just start you with some walking on a treadmill or on an elliptical at home, or just taking a walk outside every once in a while. That's awesome. Change up the stimulus. Try something new. Great. It's also an awesome time to start focusing on some mobility and soft tissue work like foam rolling on a lacrosse ball, things along those lines. Everybody neglects this. There's no way around that. So many people neglect their mobility. For those of you who are clients of mine that have done some training with me, you know that before every single workout, I make everybody go through a full body warm-up that mobilizes restricted joints and activates inhibited muscle groups. Again, I don't do it enough even, but I still do incorporate it into every single workout somewhere. There is some kind of mobility work. So some stretching. Again, get yourself a foam roller somewhere. You can get them at Marshalls and TJ Maxx for I think like $10. They're super cheap there. Get a roller. Look up some YouTube videos on how to foam roll if you don't know. But any kind of stretching is going to be awesome for you. You're going to feel better. I know so many people that they just go through our warm-up routine a couple times, a couple weeks, and they say like, man, like my back always feels tight or my hips always feel tight, and like lately it hasn't been bothering me at all. I've been doing this warm-up stuff. I'm like, that's awesome. That's exactly the point, right? So I know you have space wherever you live. You could live in a box and still have space to stretch. Try it. Get some kind of stretching down and give that a shot. I promise your body's going to thank you for it later. And then we know summer's coming. It's spring now. Today's a sunny day here in Pittsburgh, 1 out of about 6 that we have a year. It's an awesome time of year to get outside, to go hike, bike, in secluded areas, of course, not with a big group of people. But get outside, get some fresh air, and get moving. Again, we're in Western PA here where I'm at recording the show. So there's plenty of parks and wooded areas that are awesome for hiking around here. And you're only an hour or so away from West Virginia too, where you could hike in the mountains for days and get lost. Not that I recommend that, but you get my idea here. So get outside, get moving. And again, we're just changing up that stimulus a little bit and giving our body something it's not used to. And then one more thing that we can look at during this time where we're all stuck inside and not able to access the gyms and do the thing that we normally do. This is an awesome time to become better at other things outside of the gym, right? And so I know for 2020, a goal of mine was to, I guess not even a goal because it's not very specific, but I just wanted to read as much as I can this year and become the most efficient, professional, and knowledgeable version of myself that I possibly can. So I set out January 1st with a goal to read as many books as possible. I never applied a number to them. Maybe that was a mistake that is going to inhibit me later. But I read 3 books in January. And then for the last 2 months, my schedule's been a little bit crazy. Prior to COVID, it was getting crazy. And the last book that I read, I actually just finished yesterday, took me from February to April. And it should not have taken me from February to April. But suddenly, I have a whole bunch of extra time because I don't have clients coming in for 10, 12 hours a day. And so I've been reading. And maybe it's a time for you to learn a new skill. I'm doing everything I can here to keep people active and do some online training and things of that nature. But something I wanted to try to do sometime in the next rest of my life is to learn to play guitar, right? And so I'm sure I'm not the only person out there with a goal with something along the lines of playing guitar. This is an awesome time to start. A lot of you are out of work. Maybe you're getting unemployment, so you have a little bit of compensation still coming in. And maybe you're finding a part-time job doing something else to pass some time and to keep some income. But I'm betting that most of you have some free time to work on a new skill. Maybe you want to write some. And again, this kind of goes back to that point I made earlier with people using this social media platform for mind-numbing, stupid stuff as opposed to trying to help others and put out good content for other people. And so maybe you want to write. Maybe you want to start a blog and maybe you're a mom that wants to tell people about your journey of becoming a mom and how your life changed, for the better, for the worse, whatever. But you want to help other people, other expecting mothers to learn about that prior to experiencing it, right? And so maybe this is a great time to start a mom blog that you've been thinking about doing. And then it's also a great time to just start connecting virtually, of course, with some old friends and family that maybe you haven't heard from in a while. It's very easy to get lost in the shuffle of life and get too busy for for friends and people that mean a lot to you. And this is an awesome time for you to make those connections and give them a call, give them a FaceTime or a Zoom is the thing now, and just reconnect with some of those people. It's one of those things where it's more of it doesn't always have to be a goal of physical improvement. We need to maintain our mental health as well, and maintain those personal connections, because at the end of the day, if you don't have other people in your life that you have a deep connection to, you're missing out on a lot. And so, again, a great time to foster those connections and improve them when you have the time. And most importantly of all this, I think, is to stay healthy and just remember that this is all temporary. Even if we're stuck inside for another 2-3 months, I hope not. But if we are, it is just another 2 or 3 months out of your entire life. And we'll get through it. We'll be better for it. I've seen so much positivity online, on social media. My sister's a teacher, and the teachers at her school have been putting together videos, doing goofy stuff, singing and dancing for their students, or holding up signs about how much they miss them. It's so awesome to see how much the world has come together to be positive and loving towards each other in such a stressful and uncertain time. And like I said, I just think that is so cool. And that's a mindset that we need to make sure that we maintain throughout the duration of all of this. It's temporary. Use it and make yourself a better person for it. And that is everything that I had for you guys today. I hope you enjoyed the show. It ran about as long as I expected it to, even though I wanted to keep it shorter. But again, I hope that you guys find that information useful. I hope you follow us, if you don't already, on social media. I'm doing my best to continue to release more content, to be more of an asset to more people and help people as best I can to maintain their mental health, their physical health, and their sanity through all of this craziness. So you can find us on Instagram. We just actually changed this. We're on Instagram at it's CSW Center. That is Case Specific Wellness Center. And you can also find us on a new account that I just made, which is at CS Athletics, which is Case Specific Athletics. I wanted to put more of a focus on the sports performance side of this brand. That's a demographic that I haven't had as much exposure to, and I think the name of Case-Specific Wellness wasn't entirely appealing to a lot of athletic populations, understandably. But so you'll be able to find us on Instagram at those two places. On Facebook, if you just search Case-Specific Wellness, there's no page for Case-Specific Athletics yet. That may be coming in sometime in the next couple months. We'll see. And then, as always, you can find me on Instagram at jrow094, or just search Jeremiah Rowe on Facebook. You'll find me on there as well. And if I can ever help you guys with anything else, I'm always happy to answer questions and give as much advice as possible. Again, I hope you enjoyed this show, and we will talk to you guys on episode 3 of the East Pittsburgh Fitness Podcast. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll talk to you soon.